Good evening, everyone. Again, I'm so sorry for the goof up today. Technology does this to us, doesn't it? So, good evening again. Thank you all for joining in. Hi, I'm Anisha from Oman Book Lovers Club. Before we get started, a quick introduction. And even though it may sound repetitive, I have to repeat for the benefit of people who have joined us for the first time today. Oman Book Lovers Club was founded for the sheer love for books and reading, to borrow, share, exchange books, and meet fellow book lovers. That was the core idea behind starting it. However, the vision being to connect all things books in Oman, book places, book lovers, and make it one stop for all things books. All information, all book lovers reading. We have something for everyone. You want to connect with fellow book lovers and talk about your favorite books? Here you go. You want to share your books, borrow from other members? Here you go. You want to meet fellow book lovers? Here we have virtual meets for different genres. Read along book of the month, followed by a book discussion. And very soon, face to face meetups coming up. And all of this replicated in our kids club and teens club. Club also coming up soon. There are book reviews, recos, people seeking suggestions for books for themselves and for kids, members growing each other's TBR. You name it, it's here. So as you can see, a member can choose which activity they enjoy most and engage that. A happy space for book lovers in Oman. One of the things we started was live chats at OBLC. We did a couple of lives about what's happening at OBLC, and then we launched the season one on November 1st. The entire season with 7 authors ensures diversity in terms of age, gender, genres, and also the background of authors themselves. It began with a small idea as I connected with more and more authors to plan it. And as it was taking shape, one day I get a request to join the Facebook group from a gentleman who wrote in his question answers that he is an author and he lives in Oman. It was very interesting, incredible, isn't it? He lived in Oman, though not a local, and being Oman Book Lovers Club, having authors based in Oman was really, really interesting for live chats. Eventually, as days and weeks went by, I connected with more and more authors, and live chats shaped into something more concrete and structured, and we shaped it into a season-wide launch. Today is episode 4 of season 1, and we're talking to that gentleman, Mr. Matt Jardine, a British author based in Muscat. A little bit about Matt to start with. Matt is an award winning British fiction and non fiction author, teacher, podcaster, martial artist, public speaker who, for the past few years, calls Oman home. He's a Londoner born and bred, but has traveled wide, writing full time, inspired by different cultures, their unique stories and points of view. His book, How to Be a Buddhist Millionaire, has won the Firebird Book Award, was a finalist in the Eric Hoffer Book Award, and received highest recommendation by the US Review of Books. Total books published: 2 non-fictions since 2016, The Hardest Path and The Buddhist Millionaire. 2 fiction books presented at the Frankfurt Literature Festival, release dates to follow. Time to bring Matt on. Hi, Matt, again.
I have a small problem because I can't use my washing my hair joke twice. And it's a gamble to heard it the first time. So I've lost my best material to fading technology.
Oh.
How are you? Nice to see you again. It's like deja vu, Groundhog Day in Muscat.
Yeah, it is indeed. So, thank you so much, Matt, for taking the time, and it's been a pleasure collaborating with you. First of all, Matt, heartiest
Yeah.
congratulations for the birthday of your own podcast today. We will talk.
Of course, we've got the podcast birthday 1 year today. It's Thanksgiving, and of course, live chats with you. Perfect day, like magic.
Yeah, we will talk about it more in later during the chat. First of all, I would request you to tell us a little bit about yourself, who you are, what all have you been apart from being an author, and the very interesting and fascinating journey of Matt Jardine.
Thanks, Nisha. So very quickly, so just, so viewers are not just listening to me drone on about my kind of life, but just where it's relevant and relative to writing is that I've had been lucky to have a very kind of bit of a varied career. When I came out of school, I just wanted to play professional tennis. The only problem with that is I wasn't very good. So that led to a pretty average pro tennis career, which is why you've never heard of Matt Jardine, the Wimbledon champion. So I transitioned from there to coaching, which I absolutely loved. It got me involved in teaching, which I found I absolutely loved teaching, and it became a real core part of me, and I preferred that to competing. And then I taught tennis for many years. I had my own school, and I taught in other places, and I taught across the spectrum of the impoverished right though up to royal family, and that afforded a lot of my writing, seeing those different points of view. At that stage, I was also heavily into martial arts. That was my kind of time off from tennis. So Eastern philosophy, martial arts, massage therapy, shiatsu, acupuncture, all that sort of stuff.
Wow.
So I've always been, and again, all those things have really affected what I write about and why I then want to travel to learn about other cultures. And now here I am. What are we doing now? Writing full time. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. I mean, and I think as we talk, we'll get to hear more and more about your interesting experiences. So, what kind of books do you write, Matt? I think for the benefit.
So, Anisha, I write kind of two genres, really. I started off with non-fiction, which you could also call non-fiction narrative. So not biographies, but non-fiction narrative. And now I'm here in Moscow, I've transitioned into literary fiction, which has been quite a change. And it started, that transit, I'm always asked about that transition. And it started essentially... there are a number of important women in my life, but these two women started to transition from non-fiction to fiction. And one of them was my wife, Sherry, who said, why don't you try fiction? Because I'd just written non-fiction up to then. And that sort of, she said, I think you'll do it quite well. That gave me the confidence to give it a go. And the other woman was my literary agent, Renata, who we were at a cafe in Hampton Court near Henry VIII's palace. Obviously, he's not there. He's been dead a while. And essentially, she said, why do you only write fiction? That's me. Why do you only write, non-fiction? And I said, as a teacher, it's important for me to tell the truth. And she actually said, she challenged me and said, some of the greatest truths in life have been told through the lies of fiction. And something clicked in my head, and I started really studying craft, looking at Joseph Campbell and all the kind of the hero's journey, and really delving into it. And here I am now writing. I mean, I go back and forth between fiction and non-fiction. So yeah, both of those.
Yeah, and just like we were talking yesterday, there can be stories, memoir in non-fiction, which is, the narrative non-fiction we're talking about. There could be memoirs. And whereas fiction can be also philosophical, self-help, so honestly speaking, it's about telling a story or trying to get message across. So these actually, the line is pretty thin. It really,
I agree. I don't. It's not only thin; it's almost non-existent. And in fact, now when you look at the crossover, I would say that my non-fiction writing, I would argue, has improved because of my fiction writing. And my fiction writing is very much informed with the research and the kind of the accuracy informed by my non-fiction stuff. So they work perfectly together and they enhance each other. So both kind of work back on themselves, very much so. It's been a...
Like we said, with Matt Jardine, fiction marries non-fiction.
Yeah, exactly. Who knows? I don't even know if I'm telling the truth or just making stuff up. That's my whole life.
Yeah, because honestly, the categorization based of a book based on fiction and non-fiction, I think, is not really fair, because one needs to understand what the book is about and what you are looking at reading. You want to look, even if you want in a mood to read a thriller, there can be enough thriller in non-fiction category too. True crime stories, for that matter.
Yeah, I agree.
So
you actually see that's, sorry, Anisha, but you see where those lines are blurred now are with the things like Netflix and Amazon Prime, where you've got what I call the power series, the short series.
Yeah.
Because you're starting to see, because sometimes you come out the back end of a Netflix series or wherever, and you think, was that true? Was it not true? And you're seeing now novelists or novella writers starting to get the confidence to do the same thing. Definitely.
Yeah. So, where are these based on real experiences? What's the inspiration behind your books? And we can talk in more detail when we go book by book. But in general, what inspired your writing?
I mean, I can't speak for other writers, right? Of course, I can only speak for myself. However, I cannot believe that writers are not essentially writing about parts of themselves. We see the world through a filter, right? And although we like to think we're making up characters and we're pulling out these creations out of the air, essentially what we're doing is rehashing our own stuff. So every one of my books is afforded by reality, by what now not all of the characters and the realities are mine necessarily, partly mine, partly will be friends and family, but what you've seen. But I would say, if I was to be really honest, I'd say all of the things that I write about I have seen, embellished probably for fiction, but I have seen and are there, so they're a kind of, you'd say, true, just embellished. Yeah.
So, just wanted to check if we have any. Okay, that's Sherry saying hi. Hi, Sherry. Thank you for watching.
Yeah. There
So,
she is.
All right. So, what kind of books do you read, Matt? And do you think that is also something that inspires or impacts your writing?
So here's a really interesting thing, I think. My dad used to write poetry, okay? And he used to say that I couldn't read, as in I could read, but he's talking about learning to read as a proper reader, right? Until I was probably about, hey, it's Jamie, hello, mate. How are you? Until I was about 14. I mean, obviously I could read, you know what I mean? But to get into a book, and we were on holiday in Portugal, and I remember this clearly because he gave me Shogun, James Clavell, which is quite a beast of a book. And it was then that I really started to kind of fall in love with books. And I read all sorts. For a long time, I read kind of, I would say, non-fiction, really. It wasn't a massive fiction fan. But I come in and I go out. But I like stuff that inspires me. Sherry and I were talking about this the other day. What sort of characters do we like? And I kind of like the slightly downtrodden, sad characters, slightly damaged, that I, imagine this. I really, and it makes me cry. When I see an old man, and it has to be an old man, I don't know why, in a supermarket on his own, it brings tears to my eyes. Do you know what I mean? I don't know why. It doesn't happen with an old woman. I feel she can handle herself. But an old man on his own, usually buying carrots in a supermarket, makes me teary. So it's those sort of characters that I like to read about. Yeah.
So, any particular genre of books that you like to read, or it's like a mix?
Mostly literary fiction, I have to say. Mostly literary fiction. I do still love kind of the art of wordcraft. Not that I've mastered that in any shape or fashion, but I love it. I love what's being said, but sometimes, for example, the likes of Simon Barnes, which we've spoken about, he could say anything. And just the way he formulates his words, sometimes I just read sentence of his just for pure pleasure. And he writes quite a lot about wildlife and that sort of stuff. But yeah, literary fiction, really. I sometimes go into genre fiction, into crime and thrillers and that sort of stuff, but not so much. I do like a good literary fiction read, yeah.
Nice. So you did mention where your love for books started with your father's influence. But tell us more in detail about your journey as an author. What made you first venture on this path and then completely give up everything else and come into writing full time? So we would like to hear more about that journey in more detail.
Sure. Okay. So I'm assuming that people, when I'm listening to chats and authors, what I'm really in my head, I'm thinking, I kind of don't care about the author. I want to know what I can learn from them so I can continue my writing journey. So if you guys out there are wondering how you get from A to B, this is how I did it. There is a big gap between school and writing, and when I had my children quite young. I was 22. And in between me reading Shogun and having my kids, I don't remember doing a ton of writing. I might have done, but I don't remember. I probably did. But when my children were young, I started writing for a magazine called Families Magazine. I wrote about all sorts of stuff, holidays, what it's like to be a parent, of course, all those sort of things. So I started writing for this magazine. It was just, it's one of these local community magazines. So I cut my teeth on that. And then I teamed up with a friend and we wrote this children's book. I think it was about 2002. That may be completely wrong, so don't quote me on that, anyone. But 2002, a children's book called Mo and Lucy, where the characters got to choose the end. When I was growing up, we had a lot of those choose your ending stories. I used to love them. And then I started writing. So then I got more and more into it. I started doing blog pieces. And then I started writing for one of, certainly in Europe, one of Jiu-Jitsu is a martial art that I do, their biggest magazine called Jiu-Jitsu Style. I started writing for those guys. And then that really kind of helped me draw towards the professionalism until I went on the pilgrimage and I came back and wrote The Hardest Path, my first book.
Ah, wow. That's quite an interesting journey. I mean, what inspired? So, when you wrote the book, that is not same as publishing, as I understand. You wrote the book and then starts the whole getting the published. So what does it take to become a published author? After writing the book, then what? And when did you write the second book and the third and the fourth? But when did the first publishing happen? There's a
Okay,
two different stories.
I've held the story back a bit because what I learned as material for my first book afforded the way I got into full-time writing. So let me explain. So I did, Paulo Coelho, the author of The Alchemist. So I liked his stuff. That sort of fiction, non-fiction-y, spiritual-esque self-help. You could put him in that genre. He fits in a couple of different places, right? Anyway, I read his first book isn't The Alchemist. His first one is called The Pilgrimage. And I read that. And when I read it, afterwards, I thought, I want to do a pilgrimage. I didn't want to do the Camino. I didn't want to redo his story. And because of my ties to Japan, I decided to do the Japanese pilgrimage called the Hachijuhachi, the 88 temple pilgrimage. Very quickly, it's 1,400 kilometer walk around one of Japan's islands. Wow. And in my head, I wanted to prove, there was a subtext, is time and money a real limiter? Is it a real thing, or is it in our heads? Because everyone I hear complains about haven't got enough time, haven't got enough money. So I thought, listen, if I can do this thing with no real money and certainly not time, I chose to do it in 30 days, then essentially I could prove that time and money are just things, constraints we put in our own head. All right. So my point. Spoiler alert, if you haven't read the book, and if you haven't read the book, why have you not read the book? But spoiler alert, I succeeded. And so I came away from that pilgrimage realizing, essentially, and this is where I get to the writing journey, you can do anything. Literally, you can do anything. We've all grown up about the phrases, be realistic, be sensible, don't dream too much. And actually, what I learned on the pilgrimage proved that, for me at least, is not the case. So when I came back, I started to test these ideas, right? Because when I came back, there were still bills on the carpet. I still had to pay for my children, etc., etc. So I started to ask myself, can I use the things that I've learned in Japan? Can I use them to create work that I love, right? Work that not only, when the alarm goes off in the morning, I want to get up and do it. Not only that, I want it to pay well. Now, notoriously, writing, they say, don't get into writing if you want to be paid well. It's a creative thing that you shouldn't do. Just do it in your hobby time. And I thought, I don't want that to be true. So I wrote How to Be a Buddhist Millionaire, where I just basically threw myself into it, writing. Yeah. And then I interviewed a lot of people about how they live passionate, creative lives and make money, until eventually it made sense to me to do the ultimate, which is I'm just going to write full time. We're going to move away. We're going to give up all our stuff in London. Where should we go? Oh, we'll go and live near your mum in Muscat, and then we'll just hang out for a couple of years and write some books. And that was it.
Brilliant. So, yeah, and how the journey of publishing, how does that happen? That's something a lot of our members have asked that question a lot.
Yeah, of course, of course. All right, so it starts, I think, with what you want, right? So most people, I think, when they're thinking of, right, if I just think of my example, dream of walking into a shop, a bookshop, beautiful
Yeah.
bookshop, and they go to whatever, bookshelf their genre is in, and they see their book cover with their name. I tell you, Anisha, there is no better feeling. It is the greatest buzz on earth. But I will also warn you this, that the majority of those books, 98% of them, are not self-published titles. They are traditionally published titles. Now, that leads us to another conversation, is that you can now, the barrier for entry into publishing is very low. Tonight, together, you and I could write a book, and tomorrow we could publish it, right? That can happen. We could go to Amazon and we could go, we're authors, woohoo. Now, in some ways, that's great. But other ways, it also means that the standard isn't necessarily as high. Now, does that mean that self-publishing is a lower standard? No. There are amazing self-published authors. But just like when we go to the gym, when you go to the gym, the reason we go to a class is because no one trains hard on their own. You need someone. You need someone else to push you. So in traditional publishing, you have your agent, your editor, maybe 2 or 3 editors who are telling you that's not good enough. Come back and
the publisher has a team working with you.
Yes, and even down to the covers of the books. So I started off in that Mo and Lucy book, self-publishing. Me and my friend, we went to a printer's, we printed it. It was just our gig. Great, 500 copies, sold them at children's fairs, school fairs. Perfect.
That was the first children's book that you're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. That was the very first one, so a long time ago. Then when I got to the hardest path, I thought, I don't want to do that now. I want to come up a level. Like in martial arts, we go up in belts from white to black, all the way through the colours. I thought, okay, hardest path now. I want to hit a new standard. I've done publishing my own, right? Now let's see if I can be better. So I teamed up with a division of Hay House, the big spiritual writers. And which is my favorite, but apart from the Alchemist, of course, I like Scrooge. I do like Scrooge. Dickens' Scrooge is one of my favorites because of the characters in it. Anyway,
you're answering the question. Let's bring that on.
Yeah, I just saw them coming up. Sorry.
Okay, Which is your favorite book? Can you just
I love
apart from
Alchemist, is one of my favorites. Yeah, but apart from the Alchemist. So what happens then is I decided to upgrade. So I teamed up with Hay House, which is a smaller, a Balboa Press, a smaller division. So now you're going through editors, not as many. It's not a very big house, and that published Hardest Path. So then when I got to the Buddhist Millionaire, I thought, right, now I want to do this properly. I want to be the person, when I go in and see my book, that's come through traditional publishing. So what do I need? And the first thing is an agent. If you really want to do it properly, I recommend you do an agent. So I teamed up with a literary agent, Renata, who is my agent, and she got me my first kind of proper, really big traditional deal, which now we're published with short books, and then she gets various translations around the world. And so now my standard
Who are your publishers? I think there are 3 handles I'm tagging. So can you just talk about your publishers?
The publishers. So I have my my English rights. My English book is Short Books UK, which are part of Hachette. Hachette is a massive company. And then I have Spanish publishers, Urano, and then I have a Portuguese one, and then we have Polish publishers as well. Because Renata specializes in international deals. Because this is another thing I didn't know, right? When you see on the covers 2 million copies sold, you think, wow, that's a lot of people in England buying your book. It isn't. It's worldwide. It's all international rights, which you all understand as a kind of, being in the corporate world previously. And so you start to, and the other thing I love about that is you meet lots of different people. The translations are different. The people you meet are different. The conversations are similar, but different, because every kind of community has their own slant. So, yeah.
Nice. And where all are your books available? I would have asked this later, but then, since we're on that subject, Amazon, of course.
Yeah, Amazon is. Oman's a tricky one, right? Because they you can't get everything delivered here. But of course, all the Kindle stuff on Amazon. In the UK, all the bookshops, Waterstones. I think in America, Barnes and Noble. They're stocked there as well. But yeah, Amazon, for people who just like to shop online, Amazon is your best bet. Although I think Kobo is another online thing as well. But certainly in the UK and the States, in the proper bookshops is where it's available.
Right. So typically, as I have heard from a lot of people, you send to your books to publishers and then you wait and wait. Did that happen to you?
Yeah, of course. That's what we're on right now. So with
For the fiction ones.
Oh, tell me. With How to Be a Buddhist Millionaire, the wait wasn't too long. I don't know, Renata will correct me on this if I get it wrong, but I'm going to say 4 months, right? I think.
Okay, that's good.
Yeah, that's not too bad. But with these two that I've written now, the fiction is much longer, and it's really weird. Because let me tell you this story. This is important. I once auditioned for a film called The Power of One. It was an amazing film with a guy called Stephen Dorff. Okay, it was a film about South Africa and a box. It was fantastic. Anyway, I queued up outside a theatre, and the directors or the casting crew came along and looked at different people, and they said, "You go in, you go in, go right." They got to me, and I didn't get in. Right? They said no. They send you off. So I went to the back of the queue, took my jacket off, and turned my jumper inside out, so it was a different color. Does that make sense?
Okay.
The same woman. You're trying to picture it. So I've been sent away. I'm not going to get in. I'm not the sort of face they want. I went to the back of the queue. I'm just wearing something different. The same woman sees me a second time in different clothes and said, "Oh, you're perfect. Go." So, right. I swear that is a true story. And my point with writing is this. You cannot tell if the person who's reading your stuff, if you're just a good fit for them. So when you're being turned down or rejected or whatever you want to call it, it might just be that your voice, your tone, your style is not fitting their kind of, what they're looking for at that moment. And a lot of people give up. They think there's something wrong. Now, you do have to make sure that, okay, there's one question to ask. Are they turning me down because my writing is bad? You have to be honest enough to ask that. But sometimes you just have to wait until the right time comes along, which is an idea behind the Buddhist Millionaire. Sometimes you just have to let it go, write the book, walk away. If it fits, it fits. If it doesn't, I don't care. I'm writing a new one.
So we have to talk about the Buddhist Millionaire a lot more. But before that, just one question that I want to really ask you. You do a lot of things. You're still practicing martial arts. I keep seeing your posts. So how do you manage a schedule for writing? Because while you say you are full time into writing, but you do have other things that you're doing. So how do you strike a balance with everything that you do?
So I have a very, very strict and definite schedule. So Sherry leaves for work at 6:10 or something ridiculous. About 20 minutes later, I get up. I go and do my meditation and prayers and all that sort of stuff upstairs, which is about an hour.
Nice.
I come down, coffee, croissant, into the office. And then I write for about 3, 4, sometimes 5 hours if my brain can keep on it. So that's up to just before Sherry comes home from work. And then my day is done. I've found out that my best writing is done in that. So when you can't get hold of me, Anisha, it's because everything's switched off and I'm just doing that bit.
I understood that in the last 1 or 2 months that we've been in touch. I just used to know, even I could see on WhatsApp last seen like 3-4 hours ago. So I knew this is his busy time and I would get a response only after that. So now I know.
No, because I'm a definite morning writer. So you end up doing 3, 4, 5 hours, which is, a lot of writing. And in my head, that's all I can manage before my eyes start going a bit funny and I don't write anything any good after that. And then that leaves the afternoon free for me to have my life, in the evening to train, because as much as I love martial arts is as much part of me as writing, but it also keeps me fit and healthy enough to come back the next day and write. And I think when you're writing full time, balancing everything is absolutely vital. But you just create your own routine.
Yeah, yeah. So let's dive into talking about each of the books slightly in more detail. You have talked about the hardest path, you have talked about where the inspiration came from, but I would like to go into all four books slightly more in detail. So,
Okay.
of course, the maximum time I would like to spend on the Buddhist Millionaire because there's a lot of learning. I should, or let's not make it too heavy. Like, a lot of tips that we may be able to take back with us.
Yeah,
But let's
please.
start
Yeah.
with the hardest path. Briefly, what it's about, and inspiration behind it, if you can just talk about it in
Okay.
this segment.
So it's all from that pilgrimage I did in Japan,
Yeah.
the Hachichuhachi, as I say, the 88 temples, and the kind of the things that I learned there that I then formulated into 9 lessons. Really for myself, actually, 9 things that I wanted to remember about the trip that I could keep with me and use in my life. All right, so that's what that was about. Very much like Paulo Coelho's pilgrimage, but better. So that was that. But then, of course, the Buddhist Millionaire was then me taking those same 9 lessons and seeing if they can be applied to something like making money, earning money, all those sorts of things. And the 9 lessons, for example, in the hardest path are things like take one step at a time. You know, don't forget, it's about balance. Yeah. When things go wrong, and things will definitely go wrong, as we had with this stream, just relax. Something will happen. But ultimately, the main lesson from the hardest path and then the Buddhist Millionaire is that within our desire to do something, within the seed of that desire, is already the potential for its blossoming. But what you do need to do is just keep going long enough to see the fruits and the blooms of your labor. So then with the Buddhist Millionaire, then they naturally work together. They are kind of brother-sister books. Okay. So then what happens then is you then think, okay, is that just happening to me? Was that a gift just happening to me? Well, let me ask. So I interviewed 11 people that I looked at. So for example, one of them, good friend of mine, George Asprey. George plays Scar in the West End version of The Lion King, right?
Oh.
And when you watch George act, and he's incredible because he has one of the longest runs in theatre, and usually doing the same thing twice a day, 6 days a week, you could get bored of it, right? After he's been doing it 10 years. George, you can feel the love and passion for what he does. So I said to George, listen, you clearly love what you're doing. Can I interview you for the book? And can you tell me, I'm going to share my idea that if you do what you love, usually the money comes. Can you tell me if that's true? Anyway, so the interviews were with people who love what they do and yes, have found out that money sticks to passion. So then I started to realize it's not just me. In fact, I became irrelevant. It was all then about them and what we learned from people who follow their passions.
Yeah. I haven't completed. I'm in the middle of the Buddhist Millionaire, and when I started, it struck me as, and I'm taking the liberty to say it, the writing style. In fact, it struck me as somewhere a combination. And these are my favorite authors. That's why I take the liberty of. I remember reading 7 Habits when I was really young.
Yes.
I must be a teenager. So,
Yes.
I found the content resembling Robin Sharma and the writing style resembling Stephen Covey. So for me, it was the experience is very interesting. Marrying the two interesting favorite authors, and 7 Habits of Highly Effective People is my all-time favorite. And I keep talking about it a lot. So,
so that
congratulations.
genre, I like Stephen Covey. 7 Habits I like as well. And at one point I was reading all of those books. But it's called, Renata calls it kind of conversational style. As you see the way I talk now, it's it's kind of that conversational style. And I write like that. My fiction work is a little bit different from that. It's a bit more literary. But I like that. I don't like, as a reader, I don't like to be preached to. Right?
Yes.
And I don't like to be told lessons. I want you to share what you've learned in as authentic way as possible. And then me, as a big boy, I'll decide if I want to take that on or leave it to one side. And so that's what I like to read. So naturally, I found myself writing in that kind of kind of style. And the beauty about short books is that they allowed me to do that. They didn't put me under a kind of a formal or evangelical kind of border. They let me have that voice, which I'm very, very grateful for.
Yeah, yeah. So yeah, I mean, I am enjoying reading it because like you rightly said, it's more like somebody sitting and talking, and
Yeah.
I think I really agree, and I'm able to live it through the life I'm living right now, and the
Yes.
conversation we've had for the past 2 days. So
Yeah.
it's really like I'm living the philosophy of your book right now in my life. So it's for me, it's been an
You right
amazing
now are you're in the seed stages of Buddhist millionaireship. Someone
yeah,
has just asked about, and I'll just want to get to that, about how I came up
yeah,
with the title Buddhist Millionaire. And I say this on my podcast, that there are two extremes, right? So the Buddhism part is because of course the 88 temple pilgrimage was a Buddhist pilgrimage, but you don't need to be a Buddhist or a millionaire to be a Buddhist millionaire. All the Buddhism stands for is like a life of meaning, and the millionaire stands for someone who's making money doing it. Because there's kind of, on a spectrum, there's two ends.
yeah.
There's the kind of the broke creative, the arty. Yes, darling, I love what I'm doing, but I haven't made a penny for 15 years. And then on the
Yeah.
other spectrum is the rich banker who hates everyone. So we wanted to marry both. And of course, the Buddhist millionaire is quite a catchy idea. But thank you for that question. But yes, Anisha, you are exactly at the early stages of Buddhist millionaireship. You're putting in all the energy, all the effort, not yet seeing the money maybe, but you will, trust me.
Yeah, yeah. And talk about the alternate currencies that we talked about. That was a very interesting conversation. And can we just briefly touch upon that here?
This is very relevant now following
Yeah.
COVID, where money has shifted. The rich are richer and the poor are getting poorer, right? And one of the chapters I was thinking, we have come to have a faith in money that isn't there, right? We panic. Or if I haven't got money, this will happen. When you stop and you think about it, money is an illusion. And I will clarify that. So if money was the big all-encompassing kind of God or creator that we attest to it, right? If we woke up tomorrow and all the money in the world had disappeared, right? If money was the creator, we would disappear with it, but it wouldn't. The sun would still come up. What we would have to do, we would have to then learn to farm, and we would go back to trading, and we would have to use our physical resources once again.
Yeah.
But and before money, which is only a symbol of ease, it's a currency of ease, we had what would be called invisible currencies, whereby I say, Anisha, listen, I'll pick up your kids from school if you can walk my dog later. Boom, invisible currencies.
Yeah, exactly.
And at some point, we created money just to make things a little bit easier. But invisible currency are happening all the time.
Yeah, I agree. I don't know. It's the terminology that may be differ because you're calling it the alternate currencies, but all of us do practice it in some way. It's just that we have been trained, our minds have been trained to not be able to assign value to it. And of course, like you said, somebody has to pay the bill. But I'm going back to our conversation the first time we spoke. The bills will follow. Something will pay the bill. It will. So the alternate currencies will convert into tangible currency eventually.
Absolutely.
And you will find a way.
This was how Buddhist Millionaire came, because at the end of the hardest path, right, the very last lesson of the hardest path, spoiler alert again, is that ultimately, no matter all the things you gain, whether you finish the pilgrimage, whatever you do, in the end, it's about love.
Yeah.
And I met a couple. One was a priest and his wife, because you can be married in the priesthood in Shinto. Anyway, and in the end, nothing else on that trip was more special than the kindness they gave me. There was no money involved. It was just pure kindness. And that was great. So I ended the hardest path on don't forget to love, right? Love is the key. Cool. But as you say, we come back to this world, and that's all very well. Love's great, and I can believe in that. But when the bills are still coming, so Buddhist Millionaire became really a project to test my idea. If you follow your passion, does money stick to it? That's a theory, right?
Yeah.
I believe in the theory, but let's keep testing. And that's why I interviewed people. And that's why I've been doing it now, well,
Yeah.
10 years, because I wanted to prove to myself that actually it's a real thing, not me just being all a bit Tony Robbins and a bit flaky. I wanted to prove it was actually a real thing. No, I love you, Tony. Sorry, no disrespect. You know what I mean. I couldn't think of anyone else at the time. So I just wanted to prove it was a real thing.
Yeah. So I think this is the right time when you're talking about interviewing people. Let's talk about your podcast a little bit more. Tell people about what you do, how many people you've interviewed, where can they find you. Just tell us all about your podcast. And again, congratulations and wishing you very, very happy birthday to your podcast.
Thank you very much. Yeah, no. So this time last year, exactly this day on the 25th, we aired our first show with the fabulous Selena Lammy. She was in the book as well, actually. But the podcast, to be honest, I love chatting. Clearly, obviously,
Yeah.
and I like inspirational people. I like to learn about their story, and I enjoyed the interviews for How to Be a Buddhist Millionaire so much. I just wanted to continue them. So it just made sense. That wasn't even a big plan. It just made a sense. I just thought I'd do a podcast. So we just kept going. So I thought I'll do the first season. There are 12 in a season, and then I loved it so much. Just kept going. We've literally just finished season 2. Season 3 is recorded, and I'm just getting ready to pre-record season 4, where we talk with, again, always with people who he really loves chatting, sure he says. Just talking with people who love what they do and are making money doing it. So then there's so many people having this experience that you realize, actually, there's a point where you start to realize that is a real thing. It's a definite thing.
I'm bringing the stats on.
I know. Can you see the grief, the abuse I'm getting here? I'm getting absolutely killed out here, Anisha. They're hounding me.
Okay. So back to the podcast. Can you tell us a little bit about a few people that you have interviewed on the podcast? I'm assuming the season 1 would be the people you interviewed for the book.
Not all of them, actually. So I try and get as varied as possible. So let me give you a kind of a spectrum. So this one just gone out is Alice Crawford, the amazing Alice Crawford. Now, Alice is interesting. She's a ballerina. But when you first meet her, you could mistake her for being kind of weak and timid and frail. Until you talk to her, then there's something behind her eyes that makes you think, wow, what has she done, right? So when you interview her, Sherry introduced me to her, but when you interview her, you then realize the passion behind the ballet and the power comes out. So she's one example. Then I have musicians. Mike Clark, another guy I met just via the kind of karate scene, actually, had no idea. And then he released an album, which honestly, Anisha, I bought it just because he was in the karate scene and I like to help out people where possible. To be honest, I thought it was going to be rubbish, but I wasn't going to tell him that. The album is exceptional. It's gone into my top 3 albums of all time. And again, I started to realize, wow, you just don't know about people. So I interviewed him, for example. Then I interviewed Selena Lammy, just saying, who was in the corporate world until she realized I'm just not spending enough time with my boys. So she completely Buddhist millionaired, made the transition into coaching, coaching people, life coaching, etc., helping them out with their own businesses and their lives. So I try and get as broad a spectrum as possible, young, old, boy, girl, all manner of people.
Nice. And the podcast is available on Spotify and Google Podcasts.
Yeah, Spotify, Anchor, iTunes, all the usual suspects. Google. It's it's everywhere. It's just the Buddhist Millionaire podcast, and we were lucky actually. This last season, we now air in 45 countries, which is amazing. It's great. That I love. My plan is to visit them all at some point and get around every country, and it's exciting. I love doing the podcast.
All right. So the next thing I would like to talk about is the 2 fiction books that are coming up. Before that, would you like to share, I wanted to delve into this, either the 9 fun facts that you shared with us the other day. Let's talk about any one that's your favorite.
Where are the fun facts? Oh, yeah, we did some silly fun facts, didn't we? I did the one, I told you the one, I just auditioned for a blockbuster movie with Stephen Dorff.
Yes.
I tell people that
you told us about it.
Yeah, he beat me to the audition. No, he didn't really beat me to it. I don't think I got past the door apart from that. But that's my other fun fact is my favourite colour is blue. I like blue. I like blue, like sky blue. You know what I mean? It's quite a nice colour. What else? I can hold my breath for almost 3 minutes.
3 minutes is a long time.
I know, and I go the same colour as my favourite colour when I do it, blue. My other fun fact. What else did I have on here, Anish? Oh, as you know,
you taught Princess Diana, William, and Harry tennis.
Yeah, I was their tennis coach. I learned a lot from being around Diana, actually, about media and all sorts of stuff. That was a very important time. It's a fun fact. It was a very important time in my life that I learned tons from her. My other one. Oh, here we go. I went to an audition for an advert for Range Rover. And they wanted some karate samurai guy.
Interesting.
So I took my sword, do all this stuff, almost chopped my finger off. Almost took my finger off, clean off. And I had to hide it because the last thing you want to do on your audition is chop your finger off. So they're going, "Are you okay, man?" "Yes, I'm fine." As blood rushing down my white suit.
My God. But you managed to save yourself.
Yeah, just about. Yeah, but I think that's enough fun facts for now.
Let's see what we have in chat here. Sherry.
She's
waiting for her invitation to be on the podcast.
Yes, actually, she could be on the podcast because she's interested. Really throwing herself into stuff. She did it as an artist. We're in London. Decide just to take out 18 months or so and just do her art. She does some amazing stuff. So yeah.
This is a risky one. When Sherry offers to share fun facts about Matt, this is a risky one.
What? Yeah, exactly. I don't like scary movies. I don't like scary movies at all.
Yeah.
I watch them like this.
Also, I think tell your another friend, Sherry. Maybe you should write a tell all on Matt.
Yeah. All my secrets.
There's Wendy Lennon. You're an interesting writer, speaker, and entertainer.
Oh, thank you. But we need to pin that comment. When someone says you're an interesting writer and speaker, they go to the top of the class, Anisha, I think, don't they? They get.
We'll keep this on for some time then.
Oh, here we go, Nikki.
There's Nikki saying, "How did I not know you don't like scary movies?"
I know. Now, Nikki, who's just joined us, is another very, very important woman in my life. But yeah, she knows I don't like scary movies. I just can't. And it's not even just scary movies. Even anything with slightly scary music, I can't do it. I don't like it.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
well.
Another comment here. Let's take that. Delhi's Butha says you are such an inspiration. Thank you so much.
She goes to the top of the class as well. This is all the hired help. Thank you, Delise. Lots of love. Wow, you win.
Before we go back to talking about the fiction books, let's take up this that we will anyway going to talk about later, but let's take it from here. So what next? Fiction or inspirational? We will talk about the two fiction books, but apart from that, what are you writing now?
So right now I can't give it fully away because it's got to go through an agent, but I'm writing a narrative non-fiction.
That's interesting.
Yeah, it really is actually. And I told you that my fiction has really improved my non-fiction. So it's a real narrative non-fiction about a fighter, mixed martial art. I can't give any details away publicly because we've got deals to do, etc. But about a mixed martial arts fighter with a very interesting story. Now, here's the thing about this that you'll find interesting, Anisha. When I was first approached about this, I was very clear. This is in relation to the fiction stuff earlier. I was very clear that I don't really want to do an autobiography. It's not my thing. It's a bit staid, a bit academic. But I said, but I do want to find, and I call it finding the gem in the story under the story under the story, right?
Yeah.
And that takes. And this is what we were saying earlier, where fiction and non-fiction blur.
Yeah.
And it took me a while and a lot of dog walking, a lot of swimming to finally get the story under the story under the story, which I'm writing now. And I love it. I love it. It's a massive challenge, but it's really fun to do. Yeah.
Awesome. We are looking forward to it. First, the two fiction books, which are yet to be published, and then Of course, what you're writing now sounds very interesting, and we will wait for it, although it's difficult to wait. So,
Yeah.
coming back to the two fiction books,
Hmm.
I have excerpts from it with me, but why don't you tell us a little bit about? We heard from you how it came up, but just for the benefit of the segment, if you can just repeat with that and then tell us a little bit about the two stories and what inspired those stories. Are they based on real incidents around you? You told me about one, so if we can talk
Yeah.
about that.
Okay. Let's start with the first of those, which is called "Song for Cindy Siwei," and I will give details, but there are people on here whose essentially it's their story, right? It's not an autobiography, but it's as true as the people on this thread, right? And I was standing. So Sherry's mum, Wendy, who's on here, has a beautiful house in Durban, South Africa, with a massive garden. And at the end of the garden, it looks out onto a gorge, right? And I remember being with Sherry when we were there. We were visiting, one of the first times we were visiting her dad. And I remember looking at the garden and thinking, so in writing, you have the three C's, right? They ask you to, develop contrast, character, and conflict. And I looked out at this gorge and I thought, nowhere has the three C's more than South Africa. It is a story waiting to be told because of the beauty, because of the problems, because of the diversity, because of the racism. There are so many subjects to get into in South Africa. It's both a tragic story and a heartwarming story as well. So this story
Yeah,
is all the things it's not one story, it's a collection. It ends up being lots of people's stories coming into one, a collection
yeah.
of stories about how three friends, one a Zulu, one English, one Afrikaner, deal with a relationship and overcome the murder of one of the girl's parents. And can she return home and learn to forgive, or must she hate forever?
So the inspiration came from what you just shared with us, but the story is fiction, of course.
Yeah, if you had to put a
Inspired.
percent, yeah, it's inspired by in the when it goes out to publishers, will be inspired by, but it's close to 80 to 90% truth.
Wow. I'll take the
Because
liberty to read the excerpt that you had shared with us. 15 years after her mother's murder, Elizabeth Agnew returns to South Africa. Will she hold on to the hate and anger she has used to survive her grief? Or will she face her mother's killer and allow him a second chance at life?
yeah, yeah, it makes me a little bit teary because there are a lot of important parts of this book. I really want the right publisher to pick this up, Anisha, because this is a special, not because it's mine, definitely not because it's mine, but
No, it
because of the
sounds
story and because of South
heartwarming, yes.
Africa. I want the right person who loves South Africa, loves the story that we're telling, because it's essentially about peace and reconciliation, which was
Yeah.
Nelson Mandela's whole goal in 1995, I think. So I want the right publisher who really gets this to
Yeah.
take it and run with it, because South Africa and the people of South Africa deserve
Yeah.
it. It's a beautiful book, not mine. The story in general, because of where it comes
Yeah.
from. Yeah.
Yeah. I mean, even in the two sentence excerpt is quite inviting and intriguing, if I may say so.
Thank
So,
you.
waiting
Good.
to read it. The other one,
Did you?
I'll.
Hang on, Robin just asked. Robin Banks from. Hey mate, did I get the Range Rover advert job? No. Actually, I got my field, and then they canned the whole advert in general. I think they went with something else. So yes, I didn't, and I've still got a scar on my finger. Hey ho. Thanks for joining us. Sorry, Anisha, go on. You were going to ask about
Going
the
back
second one.
to, you were talking about South Africa. Let's take the comments from Delise here. South Africa is awesome, just by the way, especially with your writing style.
Thank you, Delise. Delise lives in South Africa, and yeah, honestly, writing about someone like Africa makes it easy to write, because everywhere you look, there is something to write about. And certainly for the style that I like, that kind of literary genre style, there's not much to do. It's not really me
Yeah.
doing it. It's just that whole beautiful vista comes through. I love it. It's a stunning
Yeah.
place.
Yeah. Sherry is sharing that it made her cry reading even the first drafts. So
Yeah.
yeah, we are looking forward to it. Yeah. So I'll go to the second one now. and I'll take the liberty to start the conversation with the excerpt that we have here. Um, when teenager Sammy Martin learns to use his mind to heal, little does he expect the biggest obstacle to curing his mother's cancer could be his older brother.
Yeah.
This is the book 21st Century Boy.
This is
Tell us
21st
about
century.
it.
So I'm fascinated. I have been fascinated by, firstly, alternative medicine, complementary medicine, whatever you want to call it, anywhere from traditional Chinese medicine to Ayurvedic. Do you know I said about the 3-minute breath holding thing?
Yeah.
That also comes from doing some work with a guy called Wim Hof, right? Who kind of puts himself in ice and with his mind alone manages to heat his body. So I'm fascinated by that idea. When I studied shiatsu, me and my best friend Alessandro, we had this idea that eventually, we don't know when, right? Eventually, humans will develop their minds enough. We'll go into kind of thinking rooms and we will think ourselves better. We'll learn to direct our thoughts. Now, it's not a superpower. That's why I wanted to touch with this book. It's not a superhero story. It's a genuine mind over matter thing, right? Like we know, for example, Wim Hof can withstand serious cold. I know this as a fighter, that when you're in the middle of a fight and you get hit, you don't feel it. So there's a mind over matter thing, right?
Yep.
So then I wanted to extend, okay, well, what happens if a normal boy, Sammy, finds out that, wow, I can actually fix my cuts and my breaks, little stuff that you kind of...
You know what you're talking about, the power of mind. It's actually a lot in Indian mythology. So yeah, so
Yes.
we do, what we consider gods are actually, in some theorists, it's a concept of the early humans who
Yep.
were so pure that their
Yep.
minds were more powerful, and because they could do things that we cannot do now, that's why we consider them gods. So that's a theory, that's an alternate theory to Indian mythology. So I completely actually agree to this, that it's the human that has evolved or devolved,
Yep.
I don't know.
Yep.
But there is the power of the mind needs to be harnessed. If we are able to do that, these things are
Absolutely.
possible.
Anisha, you know this as well. I mean, and the yogis, the great yogic traditions have been doing
Yeah.
this for a long time. And also the Tibetan Buddhists have been doing it a long time. And I just
Yeah.
wanted to investigate that in an actual book whereby
Yeah.
I wanted to take away the kind of mystical. That's why I give it to a boy, right? That what if this boy finds out, and again, there's no stars, there's no big lightning, he doesn't suddenly go, I can lift things. It's just a gradual, wow, I can actually learn this skill, okay? So then I thought, okay, well, let's say he can do that. Well, then what? Does that create a problem? Often we think when you get these great powers that people around you will embrace it. But very often that isn't the case. You look through history that when you suddenly stand up against something and you think, wow, I'm doing a really good job, that is the time when people start trying to bring you down. So then I look at this sibling rivalry stuff. I mean, it's brothers and all that. So I looked at, okay.
So this is within fiction, since it has a special power, doesn't it qualify under fantasy? Or is it family drama?
It's kind of family drama because I think I've been, and
The
Renata
focus
will tell
is...
me if this is true. Yeah, I very much didn't want it to be super powery. I'm not a big Marvel fan. I don't like all that. I wanted it to be a real skill that he's developed. So it's an impressive skill, but it's not a superpower, so that people can read it and go, actually, I can relate to that. I can do that. And it's an investigation of this kid develops powers. He could save his mother, but then his brother's like, no way, man, that's just weird. And then it's this relationship between the siblings.
Yeah, right. So we've talked about what next. Let's take up Samantha's questions, who had put this up on the post earlier.
Okay.
Which do you prefer writing more, fiction or non-fiction, and why?
I knew Stan was going to ask that. Stan, so I now, because I now do both, I love, and as I said to you earlier, one affects the other. I like moving in and out of them. Like at the moment, I'm loving writing this narrative non-fiction. But
Which
also,
is a
I know,
combination of both,
Exactly. But I also know that after this, I'm going straight into another one, which will be purely fiction. In fact, I want to base it here in Muscat. I'm not sure whether it's Muscat or Salalah. I'm not sure, but certainly in Oman. So I come and go, and I try and kind of play with just literally the mood that I'm in. So both is the truth. I know
that will be very interesting to read. A story based in Muscat will be something we will really look forward to, but I'm sure it's going to take time.
That will take time. The one I really want to address, well, it's kind of Arabia. I know there's more than just. It has a very mystical, cool feel. There's a lot of stuff that outside of Oman, people go, wow, that's really interesting. So I want to touch on that. That's kind of easy work to work with, right?
Yeah.
But I also want to touch upon the culture that's bleeding away. That beautiful natural culture that is kind of being encroached by Westernism. I want to touch upon that. So this novel will be very much about that.
Very interesting. But that's a long wait. I wish that could be crunched.
Yeah, that's at least a year, I would say. At least a year.
So another thing Samantha asked was, as a writer, I connect deeply with my characters and become them while I write in order to write them. Like method acting, but method writing, I guess. What is your process for getting under the skin of a character into their soul, and how to release them and let them go their way when you finish the book? First, tell us who is Samantha and then answer this question.
Sam is one of my students, one of our karate students in Kingston. She's a fabulous woman, but she also is writing. She's doing some beautiful short story pieces on a Hive blog, I think. So
nice.
she's really nice, and she's been very supportive from the word go. And actually, she's originally a friend of Sherry's. So that's a good question from Sam. Characters. Now, I very much act my writing out. So I see my writing in fiction a little bit like a screenplay or a film. And I am often...
So it runs in your head.
Yeah, it's in my head. And I will often be... So if I'm looking for the way a character would move their face, right? Beats in between. I will do that. And if I can't see it, I'll go to the mirror and go, would they do this? Would they do this? So I literally am
interesting.
like a character study. So I do that. Now, I hear a lot about this, about people talking about letting characters fly and letting them go and letting them take you over. For me, I'm not sure about that yet. I think I'm too much of a control freak. My characters do what I want when I want them to.
Interesting.
You know what I mean? So I'm not, I don't have that where they just come in. I do have that in writing, where sometimes I just have mornings where it just comes out of me. I'm like, wow, where did that come from? Nothing to do with me. There's someone else writing who's much better than me. I'll just sit here and see what happens. But the characters themselves, I know what I want them to say, what I want them to do, and where I need them to be.
Yeah. So going back to your previous point, where you say that you actually go to the mirror and do it. So I am guessing there's a discussion going on in the book club also. The authors who are also screenwriters, their books are slightly different.
Yes.
And I'm sorry, I'm talking to an author, and I don't know if it's a very appropriate thing to say, but people who have been screenplay writers, their books have that quality, that very movie-like quality of captivating the interest by every word and every page. I'll take the example of The Silent Patient for that matter. And there are many such authors and many, who are also screenplay writers. I'm guessing your fiction book might have that element, because the way you're describing your process, I think your writing is also going to be that captivating. And
it's a really good point, and something still this early in my writing career that I'm playing with, right? Because I love, as I said, I spoke about Simon Barnes, who just sometimes you read a paragraph just for the joy of reading a paragraph, right?
Yeah.
And I do love that. I absolutely love that. And when I first wrote Song for Cindy Siwei, which was called something else, An African Tragedy, I think, it was way too flowery. It was just like, don't do that. I got very told off by Renato. Just don't. It got scrapped completely. So that's when I started to look at this. Essentially, just tell the story, right?
Yeah.
And actually, in my head, as I just tell the story, I have to see the story. Then it becomes that kind of screenplay type stuff. And for me now, when I give my books out to early readers, and I'm talking about not reviewers, but people who you're just checking it, my yardstick this, and I send them a questionnaire. My yardstick is did you ever want to put the book down? What I want to do is for the reader to drop so far into the story, right?
Yeah.
That there may be better writers, there may be more, beautiful words, but for me, I want my readers to drop so far into the story that they lose time, they cry when I want them to cry, they laugh when I want them to laugh, and they get angry with the characters when I want them to get angry. That is what I'm attempting to do. Whether or not it happens is another issue. But that's what I'm attempting to do, for sure.
Yeah, I agree. With books and with movies for that matter, somebody may say this book is not good or this movie is not good. But if you feel that, so for me, the definition of any entertainment being good or not good is you may not have liked the story. You may not have liked the kind of story that is being told, and that doesn't resonate with you, so you didn't like it. But good or not good is to be judged by how much were you impacted by it.
Absolutely.
If you did not like the story passionately, which means the book was really good because it affected you that much.
Yeah, that's a good point. And I've actually seen some of your threads, which I like, which I appreciate a lot on the book club, is that you can tell how much you read by how, even though you might not like something, you appreciate the work that's put in. And I agree with you.
Yeah.
Sometimes you might not like the subject or whatever, but ultimately it's about, are you dropped in to the story and are you involved in the story? For me, that's the holy grail of writing.
Agreed, because you see, I would never, for an artist, for all art forms, for no book can be good or bad. It can be, it's not for me. So
Yes.
I'll take an example of The Silent Patient, which is most recent read. It's a fabulous piece of work. I mean, it's beautifully written. But if I had known the subject, would I have read it? Maybe not, because that's not for me. I don't enjoy such subjects.
Sure. Exactly.
So I wouldn't say the book is bad. Book is absolutely fabulous. I wouldn't read another one of the similar genre because my preference is something else. So that's how I would.
I agree. And we had a thread earlier, didn't we? We're talking about Dan Brown, and I have massive respect for Dan Brown, right?
Yeah.
My dad reads that sort of genre all the time. It's not my thing. And I think, and Dan admits himself, there are much better writers, and I always stack this against Simon Barnes, but what you have to respect and appreciate and admire and aspire towards is the way Dan structures a long book, because that's when you try to structure even 80,000 words, you realize how hard that is to do. When you're starting to head into his 130s, 140s, you start to think that's a different brain, and you can't have everything. I don't think you can have super excellent words and structure. If you can, great. I mean, that's one of those books, right? But yeah.
And my most favorite author is Dan Brown. We have been talking about it. And even though, I think it was Taha who said on the thread that that a Dan Brown book will have the similar structure, and yet the fans will go back to it wanting the same structure in a different story. So that's me. I will add.
But that's my dad. That's the whole. So one of the people we put on the podcast was Carol Wyatt, kind of the queen of thrillers and crime. She just crossed 1 million copies sold. She's a fascinating woman, right? She's on the podcast. I can't remember what number. You'll have to look at it. But anyway, she writes that genre, and it is all the same. There's only a certain amount of times you can kill someone, find out who did it, and have a little plot twist. But even so, that is a massive selling genre through airports, through bookshops, because it's an easy read. And even J.K. Rowling as Robert Galbraith, same kind of stuff. But I would argue that it's even the number one selling genre. And that's where a lot of I have no problem with commercial fiction. Some literary fiction get really like, oh, it's commercial fiction, they're just making money. Good for them. You try and write something that's sellable, it's very difficult to do.
Yeah, true. I'll just take a comment from Facebook here. Your friend says that sounds like you, Nikki Juiced. Glad to see it. So I think this is when you were saying you were a control freak about your characters.
Yeah, absolutely. A control freak as a karate teacher and as a characters. Actually, we've just seen, we were just talking about Selena, one of my guests on the.
Yes.
She's just joined in. She's got a little wavy hand there.
Hello, Selena. Thank you for joining. How nice. So I think there was one question left from Samantha. When is Cindy happening, being published? I'm so excited for this book.
So it's out with Renata. So it's gone out to Frankfurt. So this is how this works now. This is the kind of the agents work. They now go out, pitch it. It goes out to all her contacts, and it is how long is a piece of string. I did have a conversation. So giving you, if you want the inside scope, because that's quite interesting for publishing. I spoke to Renata. I said, listen, are we going to get a deal for this? Or shall we just self-publish it? Pull it and just self-publish it? She said, absolutely not. Absolutely not. This has still got it's still got plenty of life in this yet, because that's my goal. I want it to be a traditionally published book. So it's had some extra tweaks. I actually changed the point of view. It was third person, it's now first. So I changed that. And now it's a waiting game, which this is something I'm now learning to manage, because once the book is written and out, you now have no control. It's almost nothing to do with you. I'm talking about me. You have to trust whatever sources you believe in, because you don't know where it will fit. And this is now when I end up back in my hardest path and Buddhist Millionaire brain. One of the rules in both HP and Buddhist Millionaire is to let it go. Once you've created, let it go. My job is not the publishing world. My job is not to have an editor fall in love with it. My job is to get up in the morning and write the next book, and we'll see where this lands. So Sam, I don't know. After all that long, I have no idea when it's coming out. Sooner rather than later, I hope.
So I think Daniel Frost says hi.
Hey,
I'm here as well. Thanks for joining, Daniel. Sonia Ashwani, thumbs up on, I think, something we're talking about. Thank you, Sonia, for joining. Thanks, Dan. That's Sherry and Selena. Stick to your guns.
They're chatty. I like these chatters. They're great.
All right. I think we're done with the questions from Samantha. I think that's it. Anything else that you would like to add? And of course, on live, I'm holding you to this promise that one day, someday, when the time is right, you will help me connect with Dan Brown.
I will. I'll help you connect. Bearing in mind that we shared the Melting Pot forum online. Yeah. So it's not like I'm the first number in his contact field. But
I'm saying help me connect with Dan Brown, and I'm saying when the time is right.
I just don't do what I can. Anisha, I just wanted to say before we wrap up, because I know a lot of people who watch, because we do quite a few of these. A lot of people who are watching, they too want to write.
Yes.
And they're looking to see, how can I get it done? And I would say to those people, this sounds really simple advice, but it is, just write. Just find a time to write. You are a writer when you are writing, but you do have to commit yourself to find a time to write. Now, it doesn't have to be 3-4 hours a day. That, I think, is a kind of full-time writer's schedule. But you could find out, if you really want to write, in fact, if you love writing, you probably can't help yourself writing half an hour a day. It's something you find yourself doing. And if you do that over time, over a year, you suddenly find yourself with 70, 80,000 words. That's a novel or a non-fiction piece. So, but you do have to sit down at the keyboard and do the work.
On that, if I love to write, how do I know or decide what do I want to write about? Because on different days, I'm thinking of something else. And this is just something that's just come out of what you said. It's very impromptu. I didn't think of it before. But how do I decide that I want to write and then what I want to write about? Or does it begin with just rambling on a piece of paper for first few weeks, months, and then you kind of start putting things together?
Yeah, I think firstly, I don't think you decide to write. I think writing decides to do you. I think writers cannot not write. Now, I'm like that. I have ideas. Those who've trained with me or know me or who've been around me know that I have ideas all over the place. I'm all over the place. So in those days, then I'm just journaling. So I'm writing, but it might be just a mixed match of different ideas that come out. And then there's from time to time, there's an idea that you go, oh, actually, I really want to get into, like with 21st Century Boy. It was just an idea walking the dog. But then I thought, actually, I wouldn't mind getting into that mind over matter. And then as you investigate the relationship between the brothers, you think that's quite interesting. Is that anything like my brother? And then you start to go down that rabbit hole. And then you find all those, the reason we're fractured is because we're not focused on something, because we're not ready. But I think when it's time to focus on an idea, you're then involved in it, and you'll find yourself writing it for sure.
I think that what you just said sounds like just any other idea in life, you know. You want to do 10 different things, and then you start narrowing down, okay, this, and then a story within a story within a story, finding a gem. I think that all kind of builds together.
Yes.
Yeah.
No, I agree. And I think the key is for people just to remember that it's really easy to look at someone who has a title, you know, CEO, author, I don't know, whatever, right? And think there's something special. Trust me, the people on the side of this screen in chats know how unspecial I am. Right? but what I will do is work until I get it right. So my point there is, it's not about me and my determination. It's about you and the person wanting to write. Just go for it. You don't have to bring anything special to the table. You have to come to the laptop, sit down and write. Nothing else needed to do, and then you'll improve over time.
Yeah. Selena has a kind comment. Selena, you're an inspiration, man. Jardine.
That's another one going to the top of
at the top
class with a thumbs up and a heart as well. You go above the others, I think.
Yeah.
Brilliant.
So I think from my side, we've come to an end. Anything else that you would like to share, Matt, before we wrap this up?
I said it at the start of the last opening. I didn't say it at the start of this one, but I do want everyone to know how much work you put into it. This Amman Book Lovers Club is relatively new as well, and you have built it up. You have very high, in my view, you are Buddhist millionairing, if that's a thing. You are Buddhist millionairing, and so thank you to you, of course, because I do realize it's a ton of not easy work, and then when technology goes all over the place. So thank you for your efforts.
Yeah.
I'm very grateful for this time to chat.
Thank you so much. It really means a lot. Your very kind words. Yes, it has become a full-time thing for me. I was doing some other stuff since I came to Oman, but I just chose to give everything else up to dedicate my time 24 hours by 7 to Oman Book Lovers Club. I'm enjoying this. My family's enjoying it. My daughter's fully invested. You know, when people come to borrow books, she does very beautiful artworks on the paper bags. She chooses the bookmarks. And she helps me bring out books which have to go out. We do a lot of book borrowing here. And she gets a lot of books to read. That was my core inspiration of starting this Facebook group. I was looking for books for my daughter because my whole collection was back home in India, which I couldn't get when I came the first time.
Sure. Yeah.
And I said, why should I have to buy books? Because the kids' books keep rotating, and I have already lakhs of rupees invested in books already back in India. So I didn't have an inclination to buy. I didn't have space as well. And that's where the idea had started to, I said, why buy? Why not borrow and share? And that's how the book club started. And the core thing was to get books for my kid, and that's what's happening. All of this, everything else, the kids club, the live chat, the virtual meetings, everything is a bonus. So,
but that isn't that exactly an example of Buddhist millionaireship? You had a goal: get books for yourself and or your daughter. You did the goal. You got on with it, not knowing how that was going to work. You had no idea. It works, and now it's evolved to something else. That is Buddhist Millionaireship 101. I should get you on the podcast.
Absolutely. Ever since we have spoken the first time, Matt, when we talked about this concept, your sentences, whatever we spoke, has constantly been on my mind. I've been reminding myself everything that we spoke about, and I'm trying to practice it. That just keep following your passion. You'll find a way. You'll find something for yourself. The path will get created. Just keep following what you are doing. And I have to.
I see your numbers going up, and the projects are changing. You didn't have live chats, and it's growing. I told you, in the desire, in the seed of desire, is always the potential for growth. You're going to be a superstar. Then you'll forget me. You'll be like, no, he's not coming on.
Never. And let me sound very award function-ish. I would really like to thank my husband, and I'd like to take this opportunity. He's been really, really, really supportive. He was the one to really push me a lot to launch the live chats. I was
Where is he? Is he there?
He's there.
Put his face on.
Say hi, Pajit. Say hi. I have not done this before, but let's do it. Pajit, if you're watching, say hi here. So he has been extreme. He pushed me to my limit. He would come back home and say, "Why is it not happening? When is your live chat starting?" But I was still trying to figure out Facebook, Instagram, how to do it, what to do it. And while all of that was up, I was taking time. He just kept pushing me. You should just do it before it gets too late. That's him.
That's in there. Hi, great. Look, we're going to have coffee one day. But seriously, that's what you need, right? You need a good team in your corner. You're obviously very committed, so just keep at it, Anisha. Keep at it. Okay, you guys who showed up, she's just dropped out, so I'm going to conclude this. You guys, thank you so much for your time. I know we had that little technical issue at the start, but I'm very, very grateful. Love to you all, and I will speak to you all later. I now need to lie down and
sorry.
Anisha, I was just wrapping up for you.
Sorry. My computer just snapped. So I will just take the opportunity to wrap it up. Thank you so much, Matt. It has been an absolute delight talking to you and being in touch.
All right, guys, I'm out of here. Lots of love. Bye.
Thank you, everybody, for joining. Matt has left. Thank you so much, Matt, for today. It has been an absolute pleasure. Please tune into the next episode where we will talk to historical fiction author from the UK, Louis Fane, coming up on December 3rd at 4 p.m. Thank you so much, everybody, for joining and making this a wonderful chat today. Thank you and good night. Bye-bye.